Good evening, all. We're going to do a vase or two tonight. I got my daughter making these paper flowers, so I got to keep her entertained. Also need one for a donation to the store where we have stuff. And we're going to sharpen everything that we think we're going to need. And have to run back and forth. I know that's a little low. I think that's more like this. Don't really want to grind a whole ton of material off. Not quite where it was before, but I'm gonna live with it. Get it back to a clean edge. Should be good. Some point we're gonna have to turn the grinder off to be able to do these other bowl gouges, but we'll get there. Wonders are working with a bunch of wet wood this week. Why things have a bit of gunk on them. Yeah, so I gotta go back to the platform. Nice, quick, easy way to slow the grinder down is just work on take a little bit off of the heel. That one is at. This is kind of the troublesome part of doing multiple different grinds is setting the resetting the platform all the time, but the little 3D printed blocks do wonders for that. One more to go. Not to say not saying we'll necessarily need the bowl gouges, but probably will. Because just because its name is a bowl gouge doesn't mean that we can't use it to do any kind of other spindle type work, because we certainly can. Don't forget to switch the camera back so we know where we're at. Oh, should have probably sharpened the big skew, but I didn't, so we'll see whether it has an edge on it. It's generally my choice of tool to Go from square to round. Just good practice. And the simpler thing there is if we have a catch, which is always a possibility using this view, it's kind of like not the end of the world. So it's on a piece that's not even round yet. Long enough. Plenty high. It's above center. Not a whole lot above center. Could be up a little, probably a little higher. The skew wants to cut at about 11 o'clock if you're a clock-based kind of reader. Looks like I need to clean off my face here a little bit. Doing too many things here today. There we go. Now we're ready to skew into it a bit. Just think anything else, we're going to start out slow. Bring the speed up a bit. Get up past any vibration, up to the speed you're comfortable with. Just really looking to get rid of the square corners. Almost sound like that touched, but don't believe it did. This is a piece of white birch, I think. Yeah, I think there were some wormholes in there. I saw little puffs of dust, so usually a good indication there was some worms in it. Not quite there. Still not quite there. Okay. Now we're around. Little wormhole. Hopefully most of them go away. Hopefully. But at any rate, we have a cylinder. So 5.5 by 3 5/8 maybe. So we'll make a tenon down at wormholes there. Probably come out to there. Like to get rid of them if I can. Also, there's some at the other end, so probably won't be able to get rid of them all. So we'll make a tenon down here. Let's say it was 3. I won't make a very deep tenon. And then we'll go right from this point to a chuck. Get rid of our razor blade, our other razor blade. Could do the one on the tenon, but that one will be okay. This is kind of I view this as a good kind of a project for working with the skew. Of course, there's a lot of good projects for that. This one is technically is a little bit big in diameter to work with the skew. It makes it a little bit more difficult in some ways. Wasn't exactly measuring the tenon. I just made it big enough because the simple fact on something like this, that's way too big of a tenon to have a super secure grip on it. It's more than enough for a piece like this. But in this case, I can actually figure that into the piece. So I can make this bottom curve sort of go down to, or at least close to the bottom of that tenon. And I'll put the live center away. There's no point, there's really no point in not having the live center up there. I think I haven't quite determined on this vase. I was thinking it was going to be more or less for smaller type flowers. At which point I'll just drill a small hole down through there. Which is probably what we'll do. The only problem when I do that on something of this size, it's going to be fairly heavy. Heavy as far as weight wise goes. But we'll see what we come up with. Not quite true now. Not a surprise. It's not off by much. So we'll just read through it up so that we know what we have. I'm not worried about that little bit down there at the end. Probably could have this end down here semi-trued up. Once again, a whole lot of that material is going to go away, which is a good place probably to start. Drop that down. It's all going to be waste wood. You might as well get rid of it quickly. Beautiful kind of shavings you get off of that, off the skew during that particular cut. I guess we should do a little bit of a thought process, maybe. So we'll give ourselves a little extra room down there just in case. So 5 1/4. Of course, it's got to be an odd number. So divide that by 3. Brain's not working very well today. So probably 1 3/4 times 2 would be 2 1/2. No, Those two would be thrown at me. Better be lucky than good any day of the week. So that's basically our 1/3 mark, 1/3 from the bottom. So now we can round this down into that curve. Kind of tired today. I'm not going to do it with the skew. That'll just could cause me aggravation. Not that I may not clean it up with the skew when we're done. But I know my bowl gouge will actually do this quicker and easier. Kind of the old trusty milk bottle shape. This might get hollowed. It's going to be big enough, I think. See how much of a curve down in there I get or make. Because I'll need probably about an inch hole that I would have to go down through there with. At least use the full-size hollowing tools. If I go with the smaller ones, then I could go smaller there, but if I go with the smaller ones, I would definitely be doing it all freehand and sort of by feel and eye and all that good stuff. So give that a little chamfer going the other way. Almost looks like it's pretty fat, a little beefy. Make some of this curve going that way and see what we can come up with. So at least the material at the chuck is going to go away. Almost looks like well, maybe I'm not down to the tenon yet. It's a little hard to see. I'll make sure I leave some support down there. I think the whole thing looks out of proportion. It's like it's too big around. At least that's what my goofy little eye tells me. So I don't want to play around too long on the bottom end. I don't want to keep reducing that diameter. I won't have support out here to do whatever hollowing I'm going to do. Eyes are focused up here when I'm making that cut, so I can see that shape develop. Kind of hard to learn, but it's well worth it when you get it figured out. Make shapes easier, not go back past center and dig into the other side like that. You want to stop at center. It's also using a bowl gouge. Bowl gouge is a little bit harder to make that curve without leaving a line. I'll switch over to spindle gouge and see what still looks short and fat to me. What I'm going to do is just keep bringing this curve back towards the headstock end a little bit. Make that a little bit more of a make it more of an abrupt curve back there. Preferably without losing too much up here. Getting there, I think. Some days the visualization process doesn't always work as well as what you'd like it to. But just keep going at that. Because I got to keep in mind that square bit you have at the chuck is still going to go away. And I'll say that's going to allow me, once we get this done, to figure out what I'm doing hollowing it wise. Then that can go down into that bit there. Eliminate the tenon if need be. Probably will be. We're just going to sweep our curve down in the center. Hopefully on a good day both lines will meet. It'll be a nice continuous curve. Say the top is probably small enough now. So we'll just make that curve go a little bit deeper. into that area. And back over there. If we leave a tiny little hump or something in the middle, it's okay. I'd almost rather. It's got some bug holes. They're going to stay. Nothing I'm going to do about them. Okay, so let's be careful. The reason I say be careful, I just touched my finger to that. That's almost like a nice sharp edged, basically a sharp edged knife right now. Probably before I proceed on, I probably will touch that a little bit. Probably could just use a little piece of sandpaper while I'm thinking of it. Do it. Just a tiny bit. That way if I do anything goofy like get my hand in the wrong place, then we won't hit it and be bleeding and have a very short day of this work. So now we're down to the end, and now is when we're going to have to eventually here fairly quickly, we're going to have to decide what we're going to do down here. Never a bad idea at this point to recheck the chuck. It is a softwood, this is a white birch, so I was able to get a little bit more of a bite on it. Something like that has wormholes, but like I say, there's nothing we're going to do about that. You will pick up a little vibration in there because of the amount of overhang that we have from the tool, or from the wood hanging over the chuck and all that good stuff. I am still using the spindle gouge to do that work. Spindle gouge will actually drill a hole in there as well, if you need be, if you want it to be. I will probably grab a drill bit once we get to that point of figuring out how big of a hole I'm going to drill, or whether I'm going to hollow it, is more the case. Either way, it's going to get sunken down in there fairly far. Actually looks like I could hollow it. Don't want to be too aggressive. I was making a bevel supported cut going in there. It was doing it okay. It's kind of slow when you do it that way. Just trying to look at see what size hole. Mm-hmm. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Keep going deeper with it. I'll switch over to 60-degree bowl gouge. This straight wing bowl gouge will actually go right in the end grain very easily, and it will cut cleanly. So with it, will not necessarily drill a hole down there, but what I'm trying to do is match the outside shape. I'm gonna get down in there. That's still, I'd want it to be about that thick, which is probably like a little heavy 1/8 inch maybe, thereabouts. More what I was after is to see how much room I have in there. I got about 1 1/8 without getting dangerous in that area. Decisions. Because if I remember correctly, I think I can go through there are 5/8 inch bar. It's a little tight. It would be nice if it would actually be hollowed out, I think. My little bud vases and things like that, I don't get hung up with them. I probably shouldn't get hung up with this one either, but I can't anymore have to do it twice. It's not that great of a piece of wood to start with. Question will be, you know what I could do instead of doing? Oh, it's off there anyhow. Okay, I'm gonna need a little bit of an extension on it to get deep enough. So if I'm gonna take the time and drill a hole, I'm gonna drill pretty much as deep as we can go. So that's our 1 inch. These do not go up by 16ths. The next one's going to be 1 1/8 inches. Can we get away with that? I think we can. So we'll go for the 1 1/8 inches. That'll give me more room yet, which is always a plus. Of course, this will be like watching paint dry. To do the hollowing part and bang into the camera to go with it. This shouldn't be too bad. It's pretty small. And we'll use a Forstner bit on it. I probably should have looked to see where we're going to. Bottom of that, bottom of that. So I'll just go to the bottom of the collar, I think. Yeah. You can always take more out down at the bottom. To me, they should have a little extra weight. Hi. George? Felix said hi too? Or I don't quite understand why that didn't. This plays in my ear. I don't know why. George. I just messed up your name. We'll call you Jay. How's that? Does that work for you? I should have left a dimple in the bottom. That would have made more sense. There we go. They found a dimple. One of the things you can't see on that camera shot is my left hand is on the drill chuck and does not leave that drill chuck at all as I drill in, and especially when I pull back. That's a Morse paper. It can release it very quickly, and then you have a spinning drill chuck in hand or flying around, and we definitely don't want that. Also got to keep the chips cleaned out so that it doesn't bind up in there and do the next works thing. This wood is pretty dry. It's been around a couple years. Definitely got to have your hand on it when you pull it back out like that. It's putting a lot of that's putting a lot of force in there, trying to keep it in rather than it wanting to come back out. Drill bit's plenty warm. Don't touch. Had a young lady in one of my last classes, because we drill a sort of a depth hole for the bowl class is what it was. She drilled in and there was some of the wood stayed in there on there, and I'm like, just tap it. And I told her that once, and she pulled it out again and still had it on, and she went like that with her finger across there. She discovered in a big hurry that it was rather on the warm side. She said a few kind of four-letter words, and her boyfriend kind of laughed at her and called her a dumbass. But I'm like, well, I call that a learning experience, and maybe you'll be smart enough the next time not to touch something you just drilled with. So, I don't need the bent tool yet. So we'll go right to the hollowing tools now. I'll go with the straight one. I can get a lot of this material, a whole lot of this material out down here with the straight tool. I'm gonna use our spindle gouge first, actually. I'm gonna finish out this curve here down into that region up there, because that right there in that very center of that part in the middle, which I couldn't measure, would make sense if I did, is not very, no, not as, maybe not as quite as thin as I would have said it might have been, but it's maybe kind of like a heavy or fat quarter, something like that. So right in that very general area on the very bottom of this sweep, there's not a whole lot of material left. So we got to be a little bit cautious in that area. So we'll clean this up here before we start hollowing it out. I don't need to leave a kind of a sharp transition point in there. It's just our spindle gouge on its side using the lower wing. Basically, you're scraping back across there, which is fine. We'll do actually a pretty nice clean job. I'm not going to worry about reaching the rest of the way down into that hole at this point, because that I'm probably going to maybe not mess up, but it's certainly not going to be super cleanly cut. This is going to want to cut on center, somewhere thereabouts. Handle would be good. I won't put it on a super long handle, because if I put it on a really long handle, then I got to remove the tailstock. And I don't feel like removing the tailstock at the moment. They're really not. I mean, yes, it would give me a little bit more leverage, as they would want to put it, but my philosophy on that is I'd rather do things a little bit more gentle than try and be super aggressive. And I'm just shy of my tailstock, so it appears to be about center. What I'm going to do is go in behind this area, somewhere down in about there, and I'll open that hole up some more. I may not even get really overly fussy with it. This is a fairly light piece of wood to start with. So it goes in straight, tilted a little bit towards the side. This is the line turning. Cannot see what you're doing at all. I'm just kind of visualizing and sort of leaning over the lathe a little bit to sort of visualize where that bar is at. Once I got some material removed in there, all I'm doing is bringing the handle away from me. I'm dropping into the hole, turning the handle, pushing the handle away with my arm, and I'm basically making little, like, kind of like little stab cuts in there. Of course, like every hollow form, it's a pain because it's all the chips stay inside. And give it a little feel. That don't feel too bad in there. I do have a teardrop scraper on a curb bar that I can go in probably and straighten them up. So we are almost down, almost the length of my finger, which puts us down in that area already. Doesn't take long. Of course, now I got to go back in here and find my wall. I'm going to go down on the side. There's my wall. Try and make nice, little, gentle cuts, which is challenging when you can't see what you're doing, but the tool will let you know what it's doing, what it doesn't like. Doesn't like quite the amount of speed that I had it going, whatever reason. These hollowing tools like the slower speed. And really just that quick. I hit the bottom. I think I did anyhow. I hit the bottom of the drill hole because I ran into something that was flat down there. I may actually have to get my flashlight so I can see something. After we clean out 10 tons of chips here. If this was much bigger, I would definitely get the shop vac out. We might end up having to, or I'll take it out of the truck and dump it out. So if I go back in with my tool, especially if we roll it over on the flat, we should be able to mark where we're at. And we're down in there. What's up, Todd? I got a really simple-minded question for you. You made me a moderator the other night. How in the world do you do such a thing like that on YouTube? I'm just a dumb old man. I don't know. I don't know squat when it comes to that. I'm gonna take it off and dump it. Call these jaws the top. When it's not a true circle on the grip of the chuck, it does make a little bit of a difference. And yes, I am down at the bottom of my drill hole. So I think we could go a little bit deeper, get it back in the same chuck grooves, and it should run true. My wife's on here with me, so click on their name. Let's try that. She said hi, so I'm assuming she's still on there. So the three dots off to the right. Add as a moderator. Let's do the fancier one. Hit save. There you go. Cool. All right. Learn something new every day. Okay, back to the job at hand. This is kind of a challenge with these hollowing tools. I don't drop it down a fraction. I want to work right dead center, which is always a bit of a challenge to find dead center. Don't be aggressive. I think I just left a big cone in the middle. Get my flashlight, I guess. People like Trent Bosch and them people that do this stuff all the time make some of this stuff look super, super easy. Yeah, I left a cone. So I did go too low because the cone would be from the underside. I don't want to play too much because even though I left the cone, I also took out a fair amount of material down there. So I have a solid 3/4 to play with. So I can do that in a bowl with no problem. I guess it's the fact that I can't see what I'm doing. In a bowl with a scraper, you go underneath that little bump and just lift up through it. But 3/16" cutter just doesn't. Well, I was half successful. Like I say, I'm not trying to make this super thin. I'd actually rather not make it super thin. You don't want to do it twice. Do it once and be done. So I think from here we're just going to sort of clean it up. And go for it. So we're going to use a teardrop scraper. This is technically it's a traditional scraper. It's not a negative rake in there by any means. So it gets used, tilted over just slightly, basically like you were going to use a traditional scraper. Okay, I'll look even blunter than that. 'Cause the only reason I asked that is I know you asked a while back, or you said something a while back that I was getting such big shavings off of my scrapers, and you weren't. That's why I asked that. Mine are at 60. So is this going to slide around the corner? Yes. Because yes, definitely when I watched you that the other evening, you weren't getting the same kind of shavings that I was. Anytime you use one of these, if you ever have the opportunity to use one of these hollowing tools, this bend here always has to remain in front of the tool rest. Otherwise, when it touches the wood, it will literally just roll it over. Come on, not that aggressive. feels like that's something. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's need to go down a bit because I'm actually being lazy. I should get the. What I really should do is just grab the the elbow thing because that tool rest is set at the right height for these. I don't want to play around too much in that area because it's already getting kind of a little on the thin side. I just want to clean up a little area right here as it comes around this corner. There's a hump. Clean that up and down a little bit. The bottom line is I got long fingers. Use the longest finger I got so you can only, not getting very far down in there. And if you're that person that's going to pick on something of that nature, then chances are it's another wood turner to start with that would even have a comment about something like that. But it feels a little on the bumpy side or lumpy side. Just like using a scraper that you're using, would be using on the outside, that you can see what you're doing. I'm trying to be very gentle, very light touch. Be extremely careful coming back out of the hole. Actually, when it comes right down to it, it actually would be better if you just shut it off and bring it back out the hole. But I know what would happen if I did that with it not being captured, I would probably be in just as much trouble, maybe even more so. I think that's good enough, far enough down. At least I think it is. I get rid of the mountain chips in there. And look, it certainly is, certainly could go further down than that. I can still reach the bumps down there. But I don't have a, I have to be a little bit careful because I don't have a very big hole that I'm going through. So the bar has a tendency to kind of get in a bit of a bind in that area because it wants to come over and hit on this side without getting the whole way down in there. And then it could be really aggressive and exciting. Nothing's, yeah, see, it wants to, okay, we gotta go there, but then you get in here. Just trying to map out my path is what I'm trying to do without the machine running. And here's the really exciting one. How about we reach over and turn it on while it's still in there? Really think I should just leave well enough alone because it is probably, I don't know if my little itty bitty calipers are going that far. It shows there's, yeah, well, right up in this area where it's starting to taper out, that's less than a quarter of an inch there. I mean, it is getting thicker as I go down, but uh, you mean to tell me he didn't have them marked and priced before he got there? Oh, that doesn't sound like a very good move on his part either. We went to a we went to a market ourselves on Friday, and there was a wood turner there too. It's kind of a different kind of a market in some ways. but he had a whole bunch. He had actually had a little, most of like craft shows or whatever. If you went to a craft show, you'd have a booth with a table. Well, this market, he actually had I don't know what you would want to call it, a shed. It was an enclosed little building, and he had all of his stuff in there, and had some nice stuff. I will give him that. Most of it was pretty nice. He doesn't have quite, at least, I shouldn't say, I'll put it this way. He felt it was nice. So did his wife. His wife was there or whatever, and she kind of picked up on that pretty quick that I sort of knew what I was looking at. Because right away she's like, "Are you a wood turner?" I'm like, "What's your giveaway?" Well, you picked up things and looked at in a different area than most people do. I said, "Okay." I said, but the answer to that question was yes. Now, did I wrap the sandpaper the right way? No. Um, but he said he sells a bunch of stuff there, but his idea of a bowl was everything on the bottom of every bowl that he had there was flat. He, well, you'd say the same thing if you were at a booth I was at too. Oops, is that the wrong way? That's the right way the first time. This one, that's all right. Um, my simple-minded pricing philosophy on bowls and such things, and actually a lot of things, probably more so on bowls, would be height times diameter times 1.5, which seems to work okay for me. I'm happy with it, put it that way. I'm one of them that would sort of rather sell more for a little bit less than trying to make a huge amount of money on one item. But like I say, I'm not buying the wood. I don't, very seldom is there any wood that I purchase. It just, when you're at this long enough, and that's always been my philosophy on that. When you're at it long enough, you collect and make acquaintances with enough people that the majority of this is free wood. Only I knew what grit that was, like 150. I did start out with 120 in there, in case you cared. Um, so I don't necessarily try and get the big money for it. I mean, if it's certain kind of a piece of wood or something like that, like a burl or something like that, then I'm going to ask considerably amount. Then I'm going to go to that. A lot of people have the philosophy of 2 to 3 times the dimensions and height and things like that. Well, some of them people, they swear up and down that they sell a whole bunch of stuff that way, but it never worked for me. Correct. Yeah, and that's what a lot of people. Oh, you've got to go to the art shows. I don't want to go to the art show because those stupid people. First off, they don't know what they're looking at for the most part, and second of all, if you go to an art show rather than a craft show, the price tag is 2 to 3 times the amount, to set up or whatever. But we've actually never gone to a quote art show or any of the gallery shows. We're pretty much we're pretty much at the point anymore where we have the two different shops that we have stuff in, and we will go to one craft show this year, which will be in the fall. And the only reason we're going to that one craft show is I've already paid for it. Always been a good craft show for us, but It's another scenario of spending all day. You're spending the day before, or even several days before, making sure everything's priced, and figure out what you're doing in that way. And we just kind of have gotten tired of that. So we're not. That's the only show. Like I said, the only reason we're doing that is because it's already paid for. Same scenario. I make enough at the couple stores that we're in. Although we're not setting the world on fire right at the moment, but now it's summertime, so people aren't spending their Friday, Saturday, or whatever in. One is actually an art or antique store, so people aren't screwing around in those stores that much on because the weather has gotten nice. And yeah, I've never I've never had anybody ask whether it was for sale. I think it would be kind of interesting if you had a kind of, I don't know, if you would actually get a nice following or whatever, and a small piece, something simple like this that you don't spend a bunch of time on or any real money on, would be to be able to give things away at the end of a live stream or something like that. I know like Cindy Drozd and some of them other people, they do some of that. They don't, for the most part, they don't really give anything away that's of any real value. But we're going to say the inside is done, sanded. So I'll do what I can on the outside. Starting with 180. I had some little, as you see as I went across it, there were some little darker streaks. Yeah, I got a ways to go on that one, so it's been a little fast. My fingers are getting hot. Bug holes are staying. I'll give us a quick sand, and we'll flip this around so we can finish off the bottom. This is actually a giveaway piece here for the one craft store that they're in. They're doing some sort of 250-year celebration in town, and they're kind of right off of the square in town, and they've made this whole little, I don't know, area. I don't know what you would call it, a meeting area in there that they're going to have some big to do or something or other. And she asked if we would do something to give away, give some sort of giveaway or something for it. So it was supposed to be much later in June than what it is now, but now it's like 2 weeks from now or a week and a half from now. And this will go. This will go to my daughter yet, and she'll make the paper flowers for it. I should have brought one of them along down the night. I sort of forgot. So she makes some really neat looking paper flowers. Somebody has, even though she's my daughter, right? She has way more patience than what I would to do them. They're cutting it on a cricket, and then you got to fold all these little flowers up. Wouldn't be in my, wouldn't really be in my wheelhouse. Put it that way. Last step, I'm going to go with the grain. I mean, I sanded it through 600, but at 400 I can still see the scratches because they're just in, all those scratches are just in perfect circles around there. So if I don't get rid of them, I'll show in the final thing because this is just going to get finished natural. I'll get yelled at if I do it something other. Original thought was, since it's kind of a red, white, and blue theme, that we would do, I would split it in three and do a red, white, or a something or other, blue and a red, and leave something white or something in that line, but I sort of got vetoed out of that one. It's still kind of heavy. We got some more material to get rid of. Of course, now we still have another different issue of putting it back between centers. That should not be much of an issue. Let me think about this a second. Not that drawer. How about if that slips, which it probably would. That's a resin that actually goes over the one-way style live center that I made. Hmm. Yeah, one of my friend of my wife's she does a ton of that. She does these trees. They're almost sort of like a Christmas tree. I could use this one. It's made for the, yeah, let's do that. Wrong check, of course. They are a Christmas tree. They're all made out of paper. I forget. It takes several sheets, and then you get those little plastic, what you would want to call them. They really almost look like a little light bulb. And she puts them in the holes on the tree. I think she even has some sort of LED light for in the bottom of them. And she keeps saying that I know when I talked to her last year, I'm going to quit making these. Then she goes to the next craft show and I don't remember how many she had, like 20 or 30 of the dumb things, and talked to her a couple hours later, and you're seeing people walking around with them. And she's like, I'm almost sold out. Right? Well, then it's like, what's wrong with that? Well, I was going to quit making these dumb things. Like, why would you quit making something that's making you some pretty good money? But you have to enjoy what you're doing. Where it becomes work, becomes a job. So doing it that simple-minded way, it runs true, at least pretty true. True enough. Squeak at me a little bit up there. A little less pressure. And we'll just nibble away a lot of this. Because I definitely don't want it to spin. If it spins up there on that piece of wood, it's gonna leave a very big black mark, I think. I think I'll just keep rounding this down around the corner. I need to remove probably at least 1/8 of an inch down in there because that has a pretty good point in the center. Which would definitely, as far as I'm concerned, would not be in my vocabulary of something to leave. So I got a bump up there. Really, but it's thick down in there, so I have material to remove. Object is not to make the outside smaller or bigger than the inside. And we now we're gonna stay somewhere. Let's work our way back, I guess. That's not a bad view. I was gonna say it might look better overhead, but it's okay. Little bites. Because it's not overly liking it. A little bit of chattering out of it, which is generally me being too aggressive. Yeah, enough ripple lines up there. Okay, they'll sand away. More interested in what it looks like down here. I don't want those kind of ripple lines down there being something because that's end grain. They're pretty much impossible to sand out. So I just finished going around that corner. I think that'll be okay. I think we'll live with that. Undercut. I would have said this wood was much drier than what it hollowing and pulling that stuff out. I mean, granted, I'm still getting sort of almost like dust, but that's kind of typical of the hollowing system. But it also felt like it was at least damp. So that should be undercut enough. What we'll do is sand that. I could even be lazy, really lazy, and power sand that. I don't think we need to. I'll try it without once, and then I'll reduce that little tenant or little nub down there to something very small. Not too fast. look, and there was a little section right there of sort of shattered grain. So that piece of sandpaper was getting kind of dull. We'll just go for a couple little new pieces. Just got rid of that. And there will be no live stream next Saturday or Sunday rather. We will be away on a little bit of a family vacation up at the old trusty Knoebels Amusement Park in Elyngsburg, Pennsylvania. One of the things I still get to do as a retired person of the Teamster Union is I still get the invitation to go to that stuff. Of course, I actually paid a little bit when I retired to be able to keep on doing that. So we're taking our soon-to-be 3-year-old granddaughter and their families going along with us. Camping for a couple days in our camper that's still not repaired. There's issues with the furnace and the hot water heating system. They suppose the hot water heating system is fixed as best as what we could tell. The furnace, they decided they're going to replace it, and that's been like 3 weeks or probably around 3 weeks or so. And they're still working around with that. We're going to get a whole new furnace for it. And you kind of get the old trusty run around with those people is, oh, we're waiting on the manufacturer to give us the approval. And my wife was on the phone with the manufacturer, like, they've had that approval for 2 weeks. I don't know what they're waiting on. It's like, okay, well, somebody's feeding you a line of crap somewhere. We're all the way around. Okay. Might as well leave that right where it's at for the moment. Because there's probably no time like the present. Give it a feel. Doesn't feel like it's cold to the touch, so this stuff has been around for quite a few years. So we'll hope. I did a piece the other day. One of the guys at Woodcraft gave me a chunk that he thought it was a burl, and at first glance, when you look at it, it's like, well, yeah, maybe. I said it also looks like it's just a little bit of a tree branch grow over type thing. I said, but there could be some interesting stuff in there. So I brought it home and I turned it the other day, and it's hard. It's maple. It's a hard maple. Was no burl. Had a little bit of figure to it, but I turned it and and sanded it all up. And like, oh, right like this. I'm like, might as well finish it. And you know when there's too much moisture very quickly with this super glue finish, because instead of it having a 40-second time delay, it has a 4-second time delay. And it's set up before I even got the whole way around the bowl. So it's now sitting over on the bench waiting for it to sort of finish drying. And then I get to sand all the little bumps back off of it, of the quickly set up super glue. Make you go overhead would make more sense maybe. This way I can just, it's running as slow as the lathe will go, which is about 170 couple RPMs. I don't want it to go fast. I don't want to wear it. Wasn't also thinking I could have used the thicker one for this. But it's not setting up on me. The reason I would use the thicker one on something like this, because it is a very soft wood, so it means it's usually generally very, very porous. It's soaking it in. Anywhere there's any screen, I can see as it comes around, it's dry, like there's nothing left there. Or one more time down here, back up to the top or the bottom. There's a little swirly around. Got all the little vermin tracks solidly taken care of. Wipe off the excess. And we'll call that a done deal for today. Anyhow, we're gonna have a little bit more work to do on it. Let's finish taking that off, and then we will put finish on the inside, probably down about as far as I can reach. It's got a little bit of this. This is a white birch. It's got a little bit of color to it, but nothing to really write home about. Actually makes probably better looking trees and such things as that than it does something like this. Okay. Give it a little acceleration just because I'm going to spin it back up to sort of a little bit of a speed. You don't necessarily want to wear it, because just because the stuff on the surface has set up and dried doesn't mean the stuff underneath the surface down in the pores of the wood doesn't mean they have. Thank you. I'm not necessarily a very good designer. I think we had that discussion at our wood turning meeting, and them guys said, "Where do you come up with these designs?" I said, "Well, let's see, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, anybody that has any kind of glassware that they sell." I said, "There's your shapes." I said, "If you need it in person in front of you, then generally this stuff like this size is really very cheap, then less than $10 or something maybe. You could buy it, and if you wanted to measure it or whatever, or just simply take a picture of it, or carry a tape measure along and that measured in the store." Certainly wouldn't be the first time for me that I've gotten asked in some sort of a retail store as to what I was doing. Why are you measuring that? The simple answer to that is, well, I need to know whether it's going to fit in my room or my space. And most people take that as a legitimate, honest answer. And in all reality, I was taking a measurement so that I could just recreate it. So I'll cut a groove back here behind that. It's going to give me a place to cut it off. A little easier. This last little nub will get sanded away. Once upon a time, I did build furniture for a craft store way back in the day. And that was literally copying somebody else's work. It was copying some Amishmen's work because that's where they were buying the finished pieces from at that point. And of course, where they were buying them from was 45 minutes to an hour away from home. There's a prime example of, see if we can see how close we can get and hold still. This way, that way, over there. I still can't see it on camera. Hold still. If you see these, you see over in, I'll put the pencil point away so I don't put pencil marks on. Over in this area right here, around in here, up into here, even a little bit on the very end. That's basically all that's end grain coming through. Gives you an idea how far that super glue is going in. Those little dark streaks are all super glue that came through from the other side. And that's a solid eighth of an inch thick right there. That is one of the only sort of downfalls of using that as a finish. If you get something too thin, then it has a tendency to go straight through to the other side. But I'll take that over the speed in which I can get things done and a simple finish. It's actually a durable finish to go with it because it isn't a finish. It's really going down into the wood and making the wood itself solid, sort of. So let's take that nub away first. Nub generally doesn't take very much to take it off. The wonders of using the lathe for any of that sanding like that is you're totally in control of how fast the thing is spinning. Everybody always tell you, you put that drill chuck in the headstock, you better have a drawbar on it. Well, you see that was no drawbar, but all the force is going in into the headstock, not across. And it works just fine. I do it every month in my classes, and they're like, "Is this gonna work?" Absolutely will. I said, wait till all four of you are done sanding that little nub off the bottom of your bowl, and then see how hard it is to get that drill chuck back out. I've had to go get a dead blow hammer to get it out already on those lathes over there. Of course, that's a classroom lathe. It's kind of been used and abused and all that good stuff. I have to hit mine pretty hard though to get it back out. So we'll finish up the inside. Same way. The only difference on the inside is I will be able to buff this rim up here once it's cured. Down inside I won't be able to. Doesn't really matter anyhow. I get down in as far as I can first, and then can work my way back up to the rim and around that outside rim. So we do it a second time, picking up a lot of dust down inside because it doesn't widen out a bit. That's as wide as we're going to go. Like I say, this stuff is very porous. Could have, should have, probably went to the thicker one, but we started with that, so we're going to finish with that. So I'm pretty much down as far as what my finger will reach, which is good enough for me. It's not a vase to put water in, so it doesn't really make any difference or any point of trying to get some sort of finish the whole way down in there. You certainly could if you wanted to. You could use one of them medical forceps or something and kind of get down in there, but I kind of view it as a waste of time and effort myself. Now that I wiped down in there far enough, I brought dust right back up onto that top. Believe it or not, usually the dust won't stick to that and be sucked in, but 9 out of 10 times, but that one time it becomes a kind of, wet ski. So we'll accelerate that too. And that's our little flower base. Let's see where we finished at. Right on 5 inches tall. And 3 or so wide at its widest point. So, I think it looks alright. I think we could have scooped this in maybe a little bit more there, but looks to me it looks like one of the old-timey milk bottles. It's usually the kind of shape that I like to do with them. Kind of a simple shape. The real factor is the paper flowers that my daughter will make for it. We'll make it pop because those little paper flowers are neat. I took one of the vases along to the woodworking meeting the other night, and there's a couple of them guys. How in the hell did you do them flowers? I said, really simple. I didn't. I gave it to my daughter. My daughter makes them. I said, I don't have the patience for that. Too small, too tedious for these big old fat fingers. And she's made a whole bunch in the last couple of weeks because I had a pretty good amount of little offcuts of some 8-quarter material, a couple different kinds of wood. So I gave them to her, or I made little bud vases. I said, here, you make the flowers. We'll sell them at the whatever, but either of the stores, and the money's yours. So she was all about that. Of Gerald, Dad's giving me money for that. I'm not giving you anything, but I said, I'm giving you a little piece of wood for you to make a couple dollars on. So what time we got? 7:30. Um, yeah, there's actually They actually have a guy now at the woodcraft store that I teach at that's doing sort of the same thing. He's doing very simple. Generally, what they do though, that's kind of where I say it's not. I don't know, not necessarily for me. His idea of a vase is kind of almost like a just a straight walled, straight up and down. Of course, I can understand why he wants to do it that way because he's going to carve on it. And he did some of that. Some of the ones I saw of his, it's sort of like a almost like a lattice, and he will actually go the whole way through to the inside, so it's all open. He likes it. That guy there is also I don't know what the technical term would be, a demonstrator representative for saber-tooth burrs. Trying to think what the other burr company name is. He's kind of a representative demonstrator kind of thing for like two different burr manufacturers of the carbide burrs. He's doing a lot of it with just a plain old Dremel with I think he said he uses a flex shaft on the Dremel. Sure. Once again, it's kind of another one of those areas that you either I don't know how you want to put it, either love it or don't. You love it or hate it, and I'd kind of be down in the middle of that road. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Cuts all. There's around this area. There's saber tooth. I'm sure they're all over the country, but oh, that puppy's out of balance. A little itty bitty piece. Show me my tits. I don't have no tits. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, I kind of forgot about it. I think he was actually doing a class. Well, I wasn't home. I was down at the market thing with the family. Yeah, can't imagine why. I think he was gonna. I think it was this past Friday. He was gonna teach a class at Woodcraft. At least the last time I looked, I think he only had one person sign up. I don't know whether he'll sort of stick with it or not. This will be a very small natural edge bowl, as in very small till it gets round. It's probably going to be probably not much over 4 inches in diameter. A little offcut piece. Hopefully that's getting closer. Round, not round. This is actually a little crotch piece. So somewhere the crotch figure on this is offset. I mean, right there, a little bit coming through. Still a tiny bit of the path is right there. So that means this thing has three separate height pieces. Right there, there. I think I'll leave it alone. See what it does. Only a little itty bitty piece, so. Well, I should have made it round. It's a little on the low side. A lot on the low side, maybe. I guess we're making another cut because we need to move that over a bit. Um, Never. I never got into making shot glasses. I've never made any shot glasses myself. Nothing wrong with them. I made a little more so little barrel shape. I do some of them. The rest is too long. I make a little barrel shape. There again, some little offcuts of like 1 3/4 to 2 inch material that you kind of don't really feel like throwing away. I make little toothpick holders out of them. Guess it could be in a bit. Oh, not that far. Long way. Go there. That'll be better. This thing's got a bit of a wobble to it now because of how I had it moved it around. I just need a flat spot in here to get a bit of a tenant on it. So not quite enough. You're looking at it right here. I said probably the most enjoyable. I like to make the bowls. I like making bowls. I think it's very interesting to make these small ones like this as well. Let's go down a little bit further. Let's go over here and see what that looks like. It's got this dark streak is actually part of the pith that's going down through there. That also feels like it's semi-rotten in there. So we're gonna make this thing even smaller yet. Yeah, some of the regulars tonight aren't there. Must be busy. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want it to get too much smaller than what it is. Yeah, if you're watching and like what you see, definitely feel free to smash that subscribe button, the like button, helping a guy out like me. Help this thing grow a little bit would be great. So we have our tenants, and now we're going to get rid of this corner and make it round. Thank you. This will get a nice small pennant, foot, all the above. That's in about that, about eighth of an inch. Should be good. Clean up some of the base. Still don't have it quite shaped to the top. We'll see how far in here we can get. I want this to be a complete curve, bottom to top. I don't want it to come around the corner and go straight up. Like we're going to go one more time. You're a funny guy. Yeah, you probably could. Somebody, I'm making a, I don't know what you want to call them, a barn door. That's what I call them, sliding door for. And he gave it the challenge of finding cherry rope molding. I found one or two places, and the one place that I found that would work for what we had discussed was, what the heck did I see? $42 for an 8-foot piece. That's what I told him. I said, he had sent me the link for it, and I'm like, your money. I don't tell anybody how to spend their money. I said, that just seems to me a little excessive, but okay. Traditional scraper, so I can get into that corner. The rest of it's cleanly cut, as you can see. I don't really have to do anything up and around. I just have to do in here on this little corner. Come around that corner. Blend it into that corner. That's a little bumpy. And so didn't quite like that down there. Feels like that should get to the point where the wonders of using them in such a big wide one. I can use the whole kind of the whole blade in different stages. Never at one time, but I got a whole blade worth of burr. That means I don't have to go back and sharpen so often. Do it up on the shearing, put it up on an angle. It does a shearing cut. Gives you nice little angel hair shavings. Cover that one more time. This is off of that same piece of wood, so I'm going to venture a guess and say it's not as dry as what I thought it would be. It's generally the only reason that it would be picking up the grain a little bit there is because it's fairly wet. or it just wants to be a doo-wad. Got some grain going every which way but loose in that area too. Does not help the situation. Also has a pain in the you know what, because that's a place that's rather more difficult to stand. So we'll set that one aside. We'll go to the weapon. Showed this tool to one or two of the guys that I was teaching the last time around. They're like, I said, you want to try this one? They're like, they took one look at it and said, no, thank you. I said, why? Because that looks like something you should be trying to kill somebody with rather than turn with it. And I'm like, it just has a very long point on it. That's all. So it's not that exciting. We're going to use it up on its edge to go with it. So we're not sticking it in the point, but it does have a very good burr on it. If that looks as good as it feels, almost tiny bit left. Let's put it right in front of the camera, why don't you? Um, and as you can see, I was the whole way up there on the top of that. It will allow you to go up in that high on it, as long as it's over in that shearing angle. I've never had it do anything weird. Try not to go too terribly high on it, but absolutely little angel hair shavings come off when you use it right. That'll work. So you look at it in the aspect of you either spend an extra 5 minutes or more sanding, or you use the tool that's going to save that 5 or 10 minutes of sanding. And I don't like to sand, so I would sooner use that tool to make my life easier. Now we will give this outside a sand. This is a piece will get sanded and not finished because it is just like the rest of the stuff that I got from that guy. It is, I'm pretty sure it's not to the point to do put the super glue on it for sure. Unlike the other piece we were able to get away with easily enough. In reverse, nice light touch when you go over those rings because it's interrupted. Lots of air space. Also need to sand down in this little area here. Should really do that first. If all goes to plan, that will be our finished foot, so to speak, of this little bowl. That nub down there will go away, and then that will become, that flat area will become what's going to sit on the table. And just quickly go through them and grits. I'm going to get, no matter which way I go, the lathe right now is in reverse. Um, and yes, technically I'm still standing against the rotation. For me, on the outside of a bowl, or anything like this. Number one, the dust collection is right there. And number two, I find it to be a little easier to get a better sight line, a better feel, whatever you want to consider it, on what I'm sanding, doing it on the, more so on the top. Whereas if I was to do it the other way, I would be down underneath. It works both ways. One of these days, I'm gonna have to throw this pad out. It served its life purpose. As always, first sand is the longest sand, longest amount. There, all we're doing is removing the previous grit scratches. That was 320. We'll do 400 and done. And that should be that. Get rid of the noisemaker because it has a tendency to interrupt with the mic. That I have not been able to figure out how to not get it to interrupt. No, it's moving in the opposite direction. Well, technically the sandpaper is going around. Let's go back over top. So in this case, the sandpaper, the disc is spinning in this direction, so it would be spinning clockwise. So no matter which way this piece is spinning, it's always sort of going across it and not with it. If you get into the situation, there'll be sometimes on a bowl or something like that where you're sort of rotation of the sanding disc is going the same direction as what the piece of wood is, and then you find it doesn't sand very well. I mean, there's some places sometimes that you may end up with that situation. You almost can't get away from it, but for the most part, it's actually sanding the almost. I would call it across the rotation. Would be what I would call it. If that makes sense. That answers. Hopefully, that answers your question. It's kind of a loaded question in some ways. Forward works better to cut. I got to get this thing off here before it falls off on me. I got to reduce this diameter in here down to my live center. Even if you're to use one of the inertia sanders and would use it in that fashion, it's still spinning sort of either clockwise or even counterclockwise wherever you are on the bowl, but it's still sanding basically almost across the grain and not with the grain. So we'll get this flipped around, hollow it out, and call it a day. A little overkill for the chuck size, but that's the size tenon I put on it, so nothing like using a nice big heavy duty chuck to do a little pee-wee job, but it works. Doesn't really make a difference. It's more about the fact of making the tenon just a shade bit too big, as usual. That will cause me some work when once it's finished, and I'll have to resand that a little bit there. I'm off a little bit. That should be way less than an eighth of an inch in there. That will leave marks. Evidently, I didn't quite get as good a mark as what I thought I did. Not the end of the world, because those little marks, because there again, I'm not cranking down on it with two hands like you see some people do, because it just doesn't. This is a Vic mark chuck, so it's very substantial already. Um, so the marks that it will leave will be like a little wedge, and that little wedge is actually pushed up. So when I would flip this around and back in between center, so to speak, that little bit of area with a little bit of hand sandpaper goes away very, very quickly and very easily, because the only thing you're touching as it comes around is the little bumps, so to speak, sticking up in the air. And this won't be finished for a week or so anyway, because it is definitely not as dry, or not dry enough, as the other parts weren't, so I'm sure this is not either. Little bowls are kind of good practice, because we don't need to necessarily, I'm still leaving steps in the bottom, don't get me wrong, but I don't need to leave a ton of material down there like you would if it was something of any size. This will go to final thickness right from the start though, which is going to be, my eye says somewhere around a quarter, maybe a tad over a quarter. Guess one could actually measure it if you really wanted to be scientific. We have to get into 30 seconds, and I'm not going that far. It's a tad over a quarter. We'll leave it at that. So according to my fingers, that feels pretty consistent. This piece is not that wet. It's not going to move a whole lot. We'll stop before I take the last little bit out of the center. They thickened up a bit. We'll get rid of the center, and should make one, hopefully just one more cut up down and through here into the center, and that'll be done. So I can see a definite, should have moved the camera. Thank you very much, dumbass. Sorry about that. I can see a definite line. You probably can't, there's too much light in there. I can see a definite line where I stopped the first time and restarted. It's also the wrong, I shouldn't say they're wrong. Not the bowl gouge that I wanted. That one actually was 55 degrees. This one's 60 degrees. 5 degrees does make a difference on a tight radius like that. So I'll pick up behind it, go through it, sweep our curve. Make the center just a tiny bit deeper than what it was. Go across the center. If anything, leave a little nub sticking up in the center. Much easier to get rid of that than it is to get rid of a dimple. Curve is not quite right though. Comes down into here and it's abrupt. It's too abrupt. For me, it's what my fat little fingers tell me. There's still plenty of meat there. For me, it's all about the feel. It's never a body shop kind of guy, but that's what the reference would be, is your fingers tell all. Fingers tell a lot. Still having a little issue with that corner. Because it's kind of a fairly tight radius. One could probably leave it alone, but I think I could go after it with the scraper, maybe. Yeah, that's about the right radius. Even though that's a big scraper, it's still probably it's a better radius than what I have right at this very moment right there. Temptation is to reach in there and touch that, and that would not end well for the fingers. Still didn't get it. If it feels as way it looks, it should. I just keep. That's my nemesis right there. The lump was back here. All I did was successfully moved it a half an inch down. So the lump is there. And I probably successfully moved it down further, but miracles never. Okay, one light pass from top down into bottom. I think we're going to say that's going to be good. Across the bottom, up through the center. And we're going to say that's going to be good. Yep, definitely can live with that. Last but not least, tiny little bit of sanding. Once again, we took our good old time, even though it may not look like that to you, but there's no torn grain. Tiny little bit maybe of a hump in the middle, but I'm going to leave that alone. I'll sand that away. So that's another scenario of not a ton of sanding to do, or at least it's going to be a ton of time to sand something like that, which is always be my recommendation, is to learn to use the tools at your disposal so that your standing time is cut down dramatically. I think we'll do that one. Use one of the little radius curve ones. At least that's the part I try and stress to people is, you don't, sanding is sanding is something you have to do, but you don't need to make a career out of it, as far as I'm concerned. It's actually got some really nice like stripes of your across there, and I would think everything. If Kurt's still here, this is actually one that unless I could be totally wrong on that one, but this bark will stay on. It doesn't show any signs of being loose at all. As long as it makes it for a week or two, I might even put it in a bit of paper towel or paper bag so that it doesn't try to dry out really quickly. I think I'm about ready to have to replace some Velcro on this pad again. I'm kind of hard on these pads. I have a tendency to push a little bit too hard on them. It is a heat activated glue, so it gets warm enough to start to lose its grip. That was 320. Throw all the disc on the floor. Always helps. So the last will be 400. And that's that. Call that a successful mission. Won't make the same mistake that I did the other day and grab the super glue and go after it because I was amazed that the other one set up like it did. And I come back later on today because the problem lies here is you feel and you say, well, it's not cold to the touch, but you've just sanded it and generated a whole bunch of heat or a fair amount of heat. So this surface is warm. And like a dummy, I went ahead and tried to finish it. And instead of having a successful, simple project, now you have a pain in the ass. How are you doing this fine evening? Show up when we're done. Sorry, because we are pretty much pretty much ready to wrap up and call it a day. Have to clean up a bit of my mess after the fact, but let's go back over there. So there's our little itty bitty 4¼ inches diameter on its widest point, inch and a half. If I got deep, that'll go away. This stays. This will just raise it up off the table a little bit, gives it a little bit of a lift. Trying to see if I could show you one of them. You can see if I color it in. Most people understand that because they're doing it all the time. But right there and right in that vicinity right there, if we can go over here. Try not to make you too dizzy while I do that. Still almost can't see it on that one. Let me find another one. Can't seem to find one that's in white wood, white or lighter colored wood. There's one right there. So there we go. If you see these two black lines there, that's where those jaws compressed, and it wasn't a complete circle. So those two corners again. In all reality, that's what all was being held on by, was those two corners. So I just got my tenon just a little bit too big for the jaws. So that, I mean, that's a little bit of extra work that once this thing out decides it wants to be dry and ready to be finished, I will put it back in between a jam truck of some sort on this side. So it'll be back on the lathe and that. I still have the ring center here. So I'll just simply put that back on. I'll spin it. And that probably will just take some like 220, 320, and 400 just to clean that little ring up and knock that sharp edge over. And I'll also be able to sand down in here a little ways. And then the very last thing will be take the nub off. Or be really energetic and actually get the vacuum. I have a vacuum truck, but generally on something that small, I don't really have one that's super reliable when it gets to be that small. So it'll probably be just done the a little bit more difficult way, I guess you'd call it, but it works. So that's what we're going to do. What we're done. What we did, what we're going to do, what we did done. So first thing first was the vase, the little vase over there, over here. It is hollow. It's not super thin at the base, but it shouldn't be because it's going to have paper flowers in it. It won't be any heavier because of the paper flowers, but it'll also have enough weight in the bottom that it won't flop over in the breeze or something like that. And then just a little natural edge, maple. It's actually a crotch piece. There's a little bit of the crotch figure going through there, across there. Shows up a little bit on the inside. So once it gets a little bit of the super glue finish on it, it should kind of pop out and look pretty nice. At least I hope it will. Other than that, that's going to be a wrap for me tonight. Anybody have any questions, comments that I can answer before I leave? Other thing, I will not be, I normally do this every Sunday night, but next Sunday I will be away. A little family vacation, so I will not be here at all next weekend, period. So maybe the following Sunday I'll try and make up for some lost time or whatever, but maybe. So other than that, we are going to call it a night and be done. Oh, thank you, Kurt. You're quite welcome. As always, if you didn't hit that, smash that little button that says subscribe, please do so. Help an old man out a little bit. Other than that, we shall see you in 2 weeks. Till then, everybody stay happy, healthy, and all that good stuff. And we will see you the next time around. Good night.